Some phrases from history are so bizarre, so out of place, that they just stick with you. They make you take a step back and question everything. Well, today we're diving into one of the most profound and frankly weirdest statements ever made. A phrase that completely flips our understanding of life and death on its head.
And here it is. Just try to picture this scene for a second. A little girl, only 12 years old, has just died. The family is heartbroken. The whole house is in mourning. And into that scene of total, absolute finality, Jesus says this. And listen, this wasn't some gentle, poetic comfort. It was a direct contradiction of what every single person in that room could see with their own two eyes.
So how did everyone react? Well, they laughed. And not just a little chuckle. The original text says they laughed him to scorn. Now, that's a really crucial detail. It tells us they didn't hear a soft metaphor. No, they heard something that sounded completely, factually, absurdly wrong. They knew what a dead body looked like, and to them, this statement was just ridiculous.
So this gets us to the big mystery, right? Why would he say that? I mean, was it just a mistake? A strange denial of reality? Or was this a deliberate, calculated statement meant to reveal something much, much deeper? That's what we're going to find out.
Okay, first things first. We got to figure out if this was just a weird, one-time comment. But when you actually dig into the source texts, you find out it wasn't. Not at all. It turns out this was part of a very specific pattern, a whole new way of talking about death that was being introduced on purpose. Let's break down the two main examples. First, you have the case we just talked about with Jairus' daughter, where he directly challenges the mourners. But then there's the story of his friend Lazarus. He tells his followers, "Our friend Lazarus sleeps," but they get confused. They think, "Oh, okay, he's just taking a nap, he'll be fine." So Jesus has to stop and spell it out for them in the plainest terms. Lazarus is dead. This proves he was using the word sleep intentionally to make a very specific point.
And what's really wild is how this idea just catches on. It doesn't stop with Jesus. Just a few years later, you have the first Christian martyr, Stephen, and at the moment of his death, he's described as falling asleep. And then, the Apostle Paul, he takes this language and just runs with it. Over and over in his letters, he talks about believers who have died as those who sleep. So this wasn't just a quirk, it became a core part of their beliefs.
So, we've got a clear pattern. But it brings us right back to that big question. Is sleeping just a nice, soft way to talk about death? A poetic euphemism? Or is there a code here, a deeper meaning hidden just under the surface? Well, it turns out the answer is right there in the original Greek. And this, right here, is where we get that aha moment. Because when you look at the specific Greek words being used in the original manuscripts, the whole puzzle just starts to click into place. It's like finding a linguistic key that unlocks a whole new reality.
See, in the Greek of the New Testament, you've got two really important words here. On one hand, you have nekros. That's the standard, clinical word for a corpse. It's what you think of when you think of dead. But then there's this other word, koimal, and that's the word they often chose for this special kind of death as sleep. And the choice between those two words, that changes everything.
So let's really zoom in on this word, koimao. Its basic meaning is simple, to lie down or to sleep. But the early Christians took this word and supercharged it with new meaning. It wasn't just sleep. It was sleep with the baked-in promise of an awakening. It fundamentally implies that the state is temporary and reversible.
And get this. This is the connection that is just so powerful. The root word koimoo gives us another Greek word, koimaterion, which literally means a sleeping place. And from koimaterion, we get our modern English word cemetery. So, a cemetery isn't a dead end. Etymologically, it's a dormitory, a place for sleeping. Mind-blowing, right?
All right, so now that we've cracked the linguistic code, we can finally understand what's really being said. This isn't just playing with words. This is the introduction of a completely new way of looking at reality itself.
What this shows us are two totally different ways of looking at the exact same event. From our normal, human point of view, death looks like a locked gate. It's final, it's irreversible, it's an ending. That's why the mourners laughed. But from the perspective being introduced here, that gate isn't locked at all. Death is seen as temporary, reversible, basically nothing more permanent than a pause.
So what this all boils down to are three core teachings. First, death is temporary. Just like sleep, it has a guaranteed morning. Second, it's a huge claim of authority. I mean, think about it. You can only call death sleep if you actually have the power to wake the person up. And third, it's a massive shift in perspective.
This wasn't denying the physical reality of death, of Nekros. It was reframing it from the viewpoint of a higher reality that has the final say.
Okay, so that's all fascinating history and theology, but what does any of this mean for us right here, right now? Well, this isn't just a lesson. The source material argues it's a blueprint for reinterpreting our own lives.
It challenges us to take that same exact logic and apply it across the board. For instance, something that we call dead, maybe a failed project or a broken relationship, from this other perspective, it might just be sleeping. What we look at and call over could simply be waiting. And something that feels gone forever might actually be about to be awakened.
And this quote really just sums it all up perfectly. It's not about denying reality. Death is real. Loss is real. Failure is absolutely real. The whole point is that, from this specific theological worldview, none of it has to be final. It is all as temporary and as interruptible as a night's sleep.
And that leaves us with one last pretty challenging question. It takes this huge ancient idea and puts it right in our laps. Look at your own life, your own challenges, your own losses. What is that one situation you've written off as dead that might, from a completely different perspective, just be sleeping?